What's going on, guys? My name's Diggy. Welcome back to my channel. Just before we get into the video today, I want to say make sure you guys are liking and subscribing on all the videos. I know everyone says it, but it really does show your support for the channel. I've got a lot more ideas in terms of Madden stuff that we can do, just reporting on some of the NFL stuff around the league with the draft coming up and free agency. So make sure you're supporting the channel as well. Drop some comments in there on what you guys think will happen in the upcoming free agency period and the draft. And let's get into the video. So first and foremost, a couple of trades that have gone down in the NFL in the last couple of days that I wanted to discuss with you guys. I'm a little late on one of them, which is actually the one we're going to talk about first, so ignore what you're seeing on the screen right now. We are going to go over to the Bouye trade, which occurred on Tuesday, I believe, and I'm currently recording this on Thursday, so I'm a little late to the party, but wanted to get my input in here as well. Bouye reportedly traded from the Jaguars to the Broncos for a 4th-round draft pick. Now, obviously, this cannot be official until the new season starts on, I believe, March the 18th. So things could change. This isn't exactly a done deal, just like the next trade, but it appears as though this is going through, so I'd like to discuss it with you guys. And I have varying opinions on this trade because for the Broncos, it's a smart trade. I think, with Chris Harris being an upcoming free agent, Bouye is a little bit younger than he is, has been more productive in recent years, obviously with one great Pro Bowl season, but has undoubtedly fallen off last year and stuff like that. With all the confusion surrounding Jalen Ramsey and the quarterback carousel that was happening in Jacksonville, I don't blame him for having a bit of a down year, but I think the change of scenery will be great. I think ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to a Broncos team that's, really trying to, start a new wave here. Quarterback Drew Lock coming in over Joe Flacco and stuff like that. So I think you get younger here by a couple of years. The only issue is that Bouye carries a pretty significant contract. So I think it's actually okay for the Broncos. They still have, I think, $58 million in cap space even after this trade. So they do have a lot of invested money in their secondary. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think this works out for them. You get a guy who's a couple years younger, has ultimately better stats than Chris Harris at this point. You can let him walk. He'll find another team for his golden years, being 31 at this point. Maybe go to a contender. Broncos probably aren't going to be a contender for another couple years, I'd say, depending on the development of Drew Lock and stuff like that. But I think this trade works out for them. In terms of the Broncos, they really didn't give up that much. I mean, a 4th-round pick, it's really next to nothing. The odds of hitting on a 4th-round pick are extremely rare, as we know. But, I mean, it does happen. You got to worry about giving up some draft stock, but ultimately I think this is a steal for the Broncos. You have him under control for at least another season. You let Chris Harris walk. You don't have to pay him. You get younger at the position. Obviously, Bouye is a little bit more of a boundary corner than a slot corner, which is, what Chris Harris is more comfortable in. But I think this works out perfectly for them. You have him under control for another year. You don't have to worry about that big contract. At the end of the day, if he plays great for you, then you can give him another deal. If not, then, it's no dead cap or anything like that. You can just let him walk or, maybe try and repackage him or trade him. But in all likelihood, if he doesn't play well, they'll probably just not bother re-signing him. But I like the trade all in all. I think the Jaguars got fleeced a little bit, but that's not entirely surprising. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think they're in a hardcore rebuilding mode. Dumping Bouye's big contract off the books, it's a smart call for them to open up more windows in free agency to sign younger guys, try and convince them to play in Duval. Obviously with Yannick Ngakoue coming out recently saying that he doesn't want to play there anymore. I covered that in my last video. If you guys haven't seen that, check that out. It's tough for the Jaguars. They're in a bit of a bind, clearly in a rebuilding phase, so you might as well, go after a bit of draft capital and hope that you land on a pick in the 4th round. Yeah, I think the only negative from the Broncos side is kind of what I've touched on already, is that the big contract is a bit of an issue, but at least they've got him under control for another season. They see how he plays, and then you can kind of go from there and make a judgment call as to whether he deserves another contract, or, if it's, at the end of the day, if he doesn't play well, you just let him walk and you ultimately just gave away a 4th-round pick for not a whole lot, but it's only a fourth round pick. So I can see where these teams met in terms of the logic of making this trade. It kind of works for both teams, and I know a lot of people are saying, like, the Jags made a terrible trade. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you just have to look at the amount of money that they were about to pay him for the upcoming season, and also understand that they're in a really tough spot right now in terms of people actually wanting to play in Jacksonville. I think by trading away Jalen Ramsey early on in the season, AJ Bouye's kind of morale went down. And then obviously, you see the tweet from Jalen Ramsey, like, free all my dogs and stuff like that. I get it. I get the reason why they don't want to be there anymore. It may not appear on the outside to have a lot of value, but I mean, for me, it's not a horrible trade all around. I think the Broncos ultimately win it at the end of the day, but I can see where the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming from. On to the next trade that we have here. This happened yesterday, so it's relatively new. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine about, he's a big Chargers fan and stuff like that, so I was telling him, they've got to improve the offensive line with free agency and the draft coming up. That's a big priority. I think their weapons are great. I think their defense is solid. Big hole at offensive line. They had one of the worst offensive lines last year. And especially with, Phillip Rivers at the helm, you can't have a lot of pressure coming at Phillip Rivers. He's going to make a lot of mistakes. He's not mobile. So, it makes sense that Phillip Rivers had the season that he had behind this offensive line. But they make a big move here. They trade Russell Okung to the Panthers for Trey Turner. Now, this one I think is clear as day. The Chargers made a great trade. And the reason I say that is Russell Okung is 31. And not to mention, in this past offseason, he was diagnosed with a pulmonary issue in his lungs and had to miss, I think, the first 6 or 8 weeks of the season. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. He wasn't super effective when he was on the field, and then he's off the field dealing with injuries, and he's over that 30-year-old threshold. Like, for me, it doesn't make sense for the Panthers whatsoever. I kind of get that, maybe you get one more good year out of him, but he's going to be a pending free agent in 2021. Unless he plays the lights out at tackle, he's going to be a free agent, and they probably won't give him a contract. And you're trading away a 26-year-old guard. Now, I get guard isn't as valuable as tackle in this day and age, but he's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He missed some time this season with injuries and stuff like that, and he hasn't always had the greatest luck with injuries. But he's 26 years old and a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's got at least 4 or 5 good seasons left in him. Not to mention, for the Chargers, it makes total sense because he's under control for one more season, and then he becomes a free agent at, I believe, 28. So if you give him this season to, work through some stuff, maybe get healthier, then he could be you could be seeing a Pro Bowl left guard or right guard for the future of the next 5 years. You put a great new young quarterback behind that, you've got something to work with in terms of an offensive line. You can build around a guy like Trey Turner. You cannot build around a guy like Russell Okung. So I don't know what the direction for the Panthers was for this trade. I'm assuming it's because they think that they can still win with Cam Newton. And I don't know. Like, you lose Luke Kuechly, which is like a huge anchor to your defense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If they still think that they can win this year, then that's some troubling decision making in the front office, in my opinion. Because I don't think Russell Okung is the answer to your offensive line. But for the Chargers, I mean, it's a great call for them. I think you get a guy who, has struggled with injury but has still great potential and can be a staple in this league for another 4 to 5 years. And, you're giving away a guy who's got serious health concerns and is significantly older by like 5 years. And you get more control over Trey Turner's contract than you do with Russell Okung's. Like, for me, the Panthers, I mean, I think genuinely it's a valiant effort because they think that they can win now with the duo of Cam and Christian McCaffrey. And they've got some decent receivers and stuff. I don't essentially blame them for thinking that this deal will be a win now kind of deal and Trey Turner doesn't fit into their long-term plans and Russell Okung can provide something for them for just one season, then that's worth it. But I think, honestly, the Chargers played this perfectly. They get a longer-term solution for their offensive line. And, at the end of the day, even if Trey Turner doesn't work out, you traded away someone who's about to be mid-30s. Like, I know he's only 31, but he's going to be 32, and, just his effectiveness is going to drop off, especially with how athletic these new edge rushers that are coming into the league are. For me, it's a bit of a baffling trade. I thought at least the Panthers could have gotten a pick in this as well. If, you had said to me that it was Russell Okung and, a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick for Trey Turner, I would have, probably said that was a good deal for both parties. All things considered, he was a third-round pick at the end of the day, so, it was great that he worked out for the Panthers, but they didn't have really high hopes that he would be as great as he has been. So, you're not losing a whole ton of value in terms of someone you poured a lot of draft stock into. But I think they could have definitely gotten a pick in this deal as well. And, that's something that I think the Panthers should have looked for. For me, it seems like a huge L on their part. I think the Chargers get a win here. Another report came out that, Melvin Gordon's looking to move on at this point. So, clearly they're going to have some space as well. Both these teams are kind of in weird positions, probably under the assumption that they can still win now, despite the fact that they have two of the biggest quarterback questions on the market at this point. So I think it's a great deal for the Chargers. I think Russell Okung goes to the Panthers, probably isn't nearly as effective as they thought he would be, and ultimately probably doesn't get a contract in his next season. He'll probably find a contract that next year when he's in free agency and stuff like that. Completely depends on his play and if he can stay healthy. And it kind of remains the same for Trey Turner, but at least the Chargers have a little bit more control over his contract. So, at the end of the day, I think the Panthers lose this one and the Chargers win it. But that's just how some NFL trades go down. Obviously, we won't be able to tell fully if this ends up working out for either team until we get into the next season, but it's just my initial opinion on it. It just seems very one-sided and a little lopsided in all honesty. All right, guys, so I just wanted to talk about one more thing that I pulled up. So I talked about in my last video how Yannick Ngakoue doesn't want to play for the Jaguars anymore. The Jaguars are planning on franchise tagging him, which I think everyone is pretty much in agreement is going to happen. But, it's also very evident that he doesn't want to play there anymore. So where would he go in terms of a trade on trade night or maybe even sooner than that? I think ultimately this report that's come out about the Seahawks being all in on him makes a lot of sense. A report came out saying that they're not willing to break the bank for a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. Obviously, Clowney is one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL, but had a bit of a down season with all of the turnover from the Texans into Seattle and, only ended up with 3 sacks and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. I think Jadeveon Clowney is a great player. He probably hasn't lived up to his number 1 overall expectations, but he's been a very solid edge rusher in the NFL. However, I think that if you're the Seahawks, you're looking at giving a long-term deal to a guy like Jadeveon Clowney or a guy like Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue is a couple years younger than Jadeveon Clowney is. I think it makes way more sense. I think PFF has graded Yannick Ngakoue higher among edge rushers on at least the last 3 seasons. He's one of the best pass rushers in the game. I think he perfectly fits the Seattle scheme. At the end of the day, you're getting a couple years younger. You won't have to pay as much for a guy like Jadeveon Clowney as you would for Yannick Ngakoue, even on the franchise tag. And then he comes into your system. You let him play for a whole year. You don't get him at the midseason point. You just let him come in, play training camp, preseason, all that stuff. Get him into a year in your system. I think he's a fantastic fit for the team. And I think he'd be super effective. They desperately need edge rushers. At the end of the day, some people have them mocked for taking one. For me personally, I have them taking a tackle in Josh Jones out of Houston, but obviously my mock drafts are going to be changing a lot, so that could end up being an edge rusher like A.J. Epineza down the road. Not entirely sure yet, but I think Yannick Ngakoue works out perfectly for them. I think they could trade for him. You let Jadeveon Clowney walk. He'll get a big contract somewhere else, probably 5 years, well over $100 million. That's, I would assume, for a premium edge rusher, that would be the contract he would garner. But, I think you're getting a bargain for Ngakoue, even on the franchise tag, for just a year. Clearly, he doesn't want to play in Jacksonville, so I'm assuming the price won't be too high. I mean, he's an elite pass rusher, so maybe they even look to give up the 27th pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then Jacksonville can take that pick, package it with Nick Foles in some capacity, and look to flip him on the open market because they know that they're going to be going with Gardner Minshew this year. Or they could be looking to draft a quarterback in this draft. There hasn't been too many reports of that being the case, but I think it's still a possibility. So at the end of the day, I think this works out for both parties. I think Yannick Ngakoue wants out. I think the Seahawks could use another edge rusher and definitely don't want to give Jadeveon Clowney the contract that he's looking for. So I think this works out for both of them. And it was just a very interesting rumor. Makes a lot of sense to me. I understand it. Some people, kind of don't get the logic behind it, but you kind of have to know about Ngakoue wanting out of the Jacksonville and, the Seahawks desperately needing edge rushers. So those are the three things I really wanted to touch on in today's video. I'm expecting this to come out probably tomorrow on Friday, if I get around to editing it in time and stuff like that. I wanted to get this video out, give my opinions on all the deals that have been made, and even a little bit of rumors as well with this whole Yannick Ngakoue Seahawks situation. So thank you for watching this video. I know it's a little bit of a short one, but make sure you're liking and subscribing on the videos. Leave a comment down below. Who do you think won either of those trades? Do you think Yannick Ngakoue is going to be a Seattle Seahawk by next season? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.